Well, hello again and welcome back to another video. Just a small little video this time relating to an artifact that I was sent by one of my subscribers. So thank you, Peter, for sending me this and asking if I wanted it. It's of no real value, this item, but to me it had quite historic play for me. I've always been interested, as you probably know, in marine items, the sea and boats and ships and all that kind of thing. I did even almost at one time consider a career in the merchant navy, but that wasn't to be for various reasons. So I've always loved water and the sea, and as I was sent this, and just a little bit of background information about this, or from where this item came from, I should say. For those that don't know, there's some treacherous rocky outcrops around the UK coasts, particularly down on the southwest, and you may be familiar, if you're nautical minded or know about ships, the one notorious group of rocks that stick out in the sea at certain times is the Seven Stones Reef, which is situated about 15 miles off Land's End, northwest, I believe, roughly that, and about 7 miles from the Scilly Isles. So it's right down there on the tip of the UK coast. Is this reef that is quite long, and at certain times you can see breakers roll over this reef. Sometimes you can't, apparently. And to give you an idea, there is 71 recorded shipwrecks on this reef, but it's believed, because years ago not all shipwrecks were recorded as they are in later years, but it's believed that there could well be over 200 shipwrecks from this Seven Stones Reef. So let's have a look at the item that I was sent, and we'll tie it all in to this story about the Seven Stones Reef. So if we have a look here, there's some video of this item, which is a very tatty, I have to say, but bear in mind this was in the sea for a certain amount of time. But this is a Polish life jacket, would you believe, which came from a 1976 shipwreck on the Seven Stones Reef. And very interesting that this was going to be thrown away. It came, I presume, I don't know the entire history of it, I presume it was probably picked up in the water when debris was being collected from this sinking of this fishing vessel, or it might have been picked up from a beach. I don't know which of those in 1976 happened. But as I say, what we're looking at is a Polish life jacket, and believe you me, I've always been interested in marine safety, and obviously Poland was in the Eastern Bloc then, and the ship was built in Poland and was flagged as a Romanian ship. Thereafter, I believe it was sold or leased, or whatever the Eastern Bloc countries did, it went to the Romanians. And as I say, this life jacket that we're looking at is very, very basic. It struck me as being a very poor manufacture. It is only basically almost like the foam, the dense PU foam that you get sometimes sent these days round parcels, and it hasn't got a lot of foam in it really. But as I say, we'll carry on the story now, and what's related to this anyway. So interestingly enough, as I say, this very life jacket came off, believe it or believe it not, a Romanian, what was called a factory trawler ship that had been built in 1972 in Gdansk in Poland, of all places, and then I don't know how the agreement was worked, but the Romanian authorities took control of it. Obviously these were all Eastern Bloc countries going back into the 70s, and it was operated as a Romanian vessel thereafter. But interestingly enough, this life jacket, as I say, which is very, you know, I always thought a lot of the Eastern Bloc manufacture of that period was, you know, quite poor, and they didn't have a lot, you know, they often didn't have a lot of materials, so we were led to believe in this country at that time. And I mean, this has got some Polish writing on, and obviously was supplied new with the ship, because the name of the ship, or the name of the motor fishing vessel, the MFV as we should call it, was Raru, which I believe does mean something in Romanian, I can't remember. This other, whether you can see this TULCEA is the Romanian port that the fishing vessel sailed out of. But like I say, tremendously shoddy quality. I've tested life jackets before, and I know a little bit about them, and I did some tests on this, and obviously these days we rate life jackets in Newton forces, and like in the UK, a proper life jacket has to be 150 newtons, which will turn you back on your back and float your face well out the water. And for really severe offshore conditions, you know, where rescue might be a long way off, it's recommended that you have a 275 Newton force life jacket, and this, would you believe, barely equates to 100 Newton with just the blocks of foam in there. So basically, you know, I'd only really class that as a buoyancy aid. Basically, it would help support you in the water, but if you're in very cold water and hypothermia set in, and you know, your body shuts down and you probably pass out very quickly, probably within 30 minutes, even in a temperature of, say, of +6 or 7, if the sea temperature is only about +6 or 7, you've perhaps only got 30, 35, 40 minutes, a normal person, before, you know, your body starts to suffer from hypothermia and shuts down. And what happens is you don't die of the cold, but more often than not, the life jacket doesn't support you in the right position, so your head falls face into the water and you actually drowned. And I think in this case that would probably be the case with this. So very, very poor. But it's interesting what happened to this ship, and it was on the 29th of September 1976. It was a very calm morning apparently, because that's quite a rough bit of sea. You know, it's the start of the Atlantic, if you like, where the English Channel sort of meets the Atlantic kind of thing there. Land's End, the Scilly Isles, can be quite a ferocious bit of sea. But it was dead calm. But the problem was there was thick fog on that morning, and it appears that this motor fishing vessel, the Romanian Raru, obviously lost its bearings. We hadn't, if you look back to 1976, we didn't have the, you know, great, you know, navigation aids that we have now, and obviously it was just charts and a radio and that kind of basic, navigational age. They probably did have some sort of basic radar, I would assume. But it drifted onto the Seven Stones Reef and obviously, ran aground on the rocks and obviously thereafter broke up. I'm pleased to say, I probably wouldn't have done this story. There was no casualties. Would you believe this? As this was a big ship, it was what was called almost like a factory fishing vessel, where the fish was caught and then almost processed and then froze. So it had a lot of crew on this actual boat, and there was 84 crew on this Romanian factory fishing ship, and thankfully there was another ship quite close on the proceedings of when it ran aground on the reef, and all crew were taken off safely, and there was no casualties, and sadly the ship just broke up, and it was another one to the figure of the 200 plus wrecks on this reef down there on the say 15 miles out of Land's End. Interestingly enough, what happened, as I said, I assume this probably was picked up with some wreckage or even washed onto a beach. Interestingly enough, this was quite a big local story down in the southwest in Cornwall in 1976, because this was quite a big ship to run aground on the Seven Stones Reef. And when this was found, I believe there were several of them that were found and other bits and pieces of the ship that were saved. Several of these went actually into a local southwest fishing museum, and I'm led to believe that then that sadly, through lack of interest or finances, I'm not sure which, that then obviously closed down a few years ago, and these were going to be thrown away, and so hence that's how it found its way to me, but it'll hang kind of in my workshop or my man cave, or call it what you like, because I think it's great. It's got quite a story. To think this very, in my opinion, a very cheaply made Polish life jacket, finds its way to one of the most inland parts of the country that you can live in. Obviously this is numbered at 105, don't know whether you'll see that, but it's number 105. As I say, there was 84 crew on it. There'd always be a surplus of life jackets, and as I say, very cheaply made. I should think that costs, all but a few pounds to make in the 70s when that was made in Poland, because it's a very thin nylon-y material. It has got a light. It has got a light, and it had a battery, a pocket there to put a battery in. So it did have one or two choice additional features there. But anyway, interesting. Some of you an older age group like myself may well remember that the Seven Stones Reef really was forced into prominency in the 1960s, when there was a huge disaster when the Torrey Canyon, which was carrying, I think, was it 86,000 tons? I think I might have overstated that, but it was a huge amount of crude black oil, ran aground on the Seven Stones Reef, and then broke its back and started to leak all the oil out into the sea. It was a bit of a fiasco what our UK government then tried to do, because nobody had one of these super tankers run aground like this before, so nobody really knew the procedure of what to do. I mean, it was woeful, really. I mean, so much marine life was damaged, for years, and many birds lost their lives, and marine life as well. I mean, there was a huge great oil slick. The government tried to bomb the ship to set it on fire, and that all went a bit pear-shaped. I think eventually they got it off the rock and towed it further out, and I think it was bombed again and it sank. but not without spilling this vast tonnage of crude black oil everywhere. And interestingly enough, now when you read about the Torrey Canyon story, which was 1967 that happened, it's interesting that they believe that the government did more damage by trying to spray and disperse the oil with really toxic detergents, which probably killed more marine life and more birds than the actual crude oil leaking from this ship did. But I knew from bitter experience about this. You know, I followed the story of the Torrey Canyon around that time when the news broke, and you know, as a boy, you know, it was interesting to me, this huge great ship stuck on the rock and what the government were trying to do to remove it and clean the mess up. The following year, I went on a family holiday to Cornwall, which was 1968, and went on a beach, and I don't remember the actual beach it was, but we were playing on some rocks. There's some sort of waves crashing in, and we were sort of playing on these rocks, and I got off the rocks and my feet were covered still in the black crude oil that was still on these rocks. Obviously, you know, nobody had warned anybody that this might happen or that there was still oil that could come in. I think we'd had a couple of rough days, and obviously this oil was still on the seabed and still washing in, and I remember seeing great, you know, balls rolled in the sand of this really thick crude oil, and the same, my mum had to go and get some, you know, I believe it was like tar oil remover, which, I mean, I'm sure they did a bomb selling this in Cornwall in that period, but horrible really, you know. I mean, you wouldn't dream of letting your children play on that, but say we didn't know it was there until, you know, you looked at your feet and your feet were black. So that was a whole year later. It took many years for the Torrey Canyon disaster, you know, to slowly recover and get back. And I think it taught the world a lesson about how to deal with oil spillages from these super tankers and what to do and what not to do. But as I say, so that's a little story of how something, you know, from the Seven Stones Reef gets up here to me, and it's a little bit of history. And as I say, this is an Eastern Bloc life jacket dating from 1972, and thankfully, you know, I'm pleased I wasn't on a boat and relying on that, I have to say. And I can show you, this actually is a similar era. This is a British life jacket. It's called a Duncan life jacket. This was very popular on trawlers throughout the 60s and 70s. This actually came off a whole trawler, and I mean, this is far superior. It's first of all, it's kapok, which is a very highly floatable material, which is encased in a tight waterproof membrane, and then it's got the outer nylon, and it's got a much better head back rest, which obviously is filled with kapok as well, and that, I've no doubt, I have never tested that, but that is no doubt certainly a 150 Newton rated life jacket. As always, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe, it does help us smaller channels, and if you like some more ramblings about all sorts and everything, we'll come back again, and we'll see you very soon. And as always, also please like, please comment, and thank you as always for watching, and bye for now.